The thing about first contact situations, and really, this cannot be stressed enough, is that nobody tells you about the biting. Oh, sure, there are protocols. Before we begin, YouTube shows me that 93% of you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is free, it really supports our community, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Manuals thicker than ancient phone books, sensitivity training that could bore a statue to tears, and enough diplomatic briefings to make your ears bleed. But nowhere, and I mean nowhere, in the entire 300-page handbook does it say, Section 12, Subsection B, what to do when the ambassador's kid decides your forearm looks delicious. Gavin Hunt was learning this lesson the hard way. Not that he looked particularly bothered by it, mind you. He stood there in the cultural exchange chamber of Deep Space Station Aurora, a glorified tin can orbiting a planet whose name had too many apostrophes for comfort, with roughly 40 pounds of predator cub attached to his right forearm. The cub's jaws were locked down with what could only be described as enthusiastic commitment. The kind of bite that said, I'm young, I'm testing boundaries, and I have absolutely no concept of consequences. The cub's mother, Ambassador Dracula, made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a hiss. It was the universal language of, oh no, my child has done something mortifying at a dinner party. Except this particular dinner party was an interstellar diplomatic function. And the mortifying thing involved teeth. Lots of teeth. The Draknari, as a species, were what happened when evolution got bored and decided to throw a bunch of terrifying concepts into a blender. Take a big cat, add reptilian scales in patches along the spine and joints, throw in some retractable claws that could open a can or a rib cage with equal ease, and top it off with a dental arrangement that would make a shark jealous. Multiple rows, serrated edges, the works. They hailed from a jungle planet where food chain was less of a concept and more of a suggestion, and they sat firmly at the top of it. Whisk Tooth, the cub currently treating Gavin's arm like a chew toy, was small by Draknari standards, roughly the size of a golden retriever. If that golden retriever had murder mittens and an attitude problem. His scales were still soft, showing the iridescent blue-green of youth. And his fur, yes, they had fur and scales, because apparently evolution had a sense of humor, was fluffy in that way that made you want to pet him right up until you remembered the whole apex predator thing. Mr. Gavin, I am, Drashala began, her translator unit struggling to keep up with what was clearly a very formal, very horrified apology in her native tongue. Gavin held up his free hand, the left one, since the right was still occupied. It's fine. It is not fine, Drashala insisted, her tail lashing behind her in agitation. When a Draknari's tail started moving like that, it usually meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Whisk Tooth, release, now. The cub's eyes, 3 of them, because of course they had 3 eyes, widened slightly, 2 faced forward for hunting, 1 on the side for peripheral awareness. All 3 were currently locked on Gavin's face, trying to gauge his reaction. Gavin, for his part, looked down at the cub with an expression of mild curiosity, like he'd just noticed an interesting bug on his shoe. You done there, buddy? Whisk Tooth's jaw pressure lessened. Not because he was scared, but because something was wrong. Very wrong. There should have been blood. There should have been the hot copper taste of a successful strike. There should have been the satisfying feeling of teeth sinking through flesh, hitting bone, establishing dominance in the way young predators had done since time immemorial. Instead, there was just skin. Slightly indented skin. Not even broken. The cub released, stumbling backward on legs that seemed suddenly uncertain. His 3 eyes were wider now, showing white around the edges. He looked at his mother, then back at Gavin, then down at his own paws, as if checking to make sure his teeth hadn't fallen out. Gavin rotated his arm, examining the bite mark. There was a clear impression of Whisk Tooth's dental work. You could practically count the teeth, but no blood, not even a scratch. The skin was red where pressure had been applied, sure, but already the color was fading. "Huh," Gavin said, in the tone of someone who'd just noticed the weather was nice. "You got pretty good jaw strength there, kid. I felt that one." Drusilla moved forward, her diplomatic composure cracking like thin ice. "Please, you must allow me to escort you to the medical bay. Dantari's saliva contains anticoagulants, and the infection risk—" "I'm good," Gavin interrupted, flexing his fingers to show full mobility. "Really, no harm done. But he bit you." "Yeah, I noticed. With his teeth. That's typically how biting works, yeah." The ambassador stared at him. It was the kind of stare that said she was rapidly recalculating everything she thought she knew about human durability. The briefings had mentioned that humans were surprisingly resilient, something about persistence hunting and endurance. But there was a difference between reading about it and watching a member of your species, a child no less, fail to break the skin of what was supposed to be a soft, squishy diplomat. Whisk Tooth made a small sound, barely more than a whimper. It was the noise of a young predator whose entire worldview had just been drop-kicked into a wall. Gavin crouched down, bringing himself closer to the cub's eye level. "Hey, you okay?" The cub backed up another step. His fur was standing on end now, making him look like he'd been startled by a loud noise. "You should be bleeding." "Should I?" Gavin asked, and there was something almost playful in his voice. "I bit you hard. Full pressure. That bite breaks Dantari juvenile hide. I have tested this." Whisk Tooth sounded personally offended by the lack of injury, like Gavin was cheating at a game nobody had explained. The Taibudi rules too. "Well, I'm not Dantari," Gavin pointed out reasonably. "You are soft species." The cub's translator rendered it with capital letters, suggesting the original phrase was some kind of categorical designation. "Soft species break. You are supposed to break." Drusilla put a clawed hand on her son's shoulder, her voice dropping into what was probably a very stern, motherly register. "Whisk Tooth, we do not categorize our diplomatic partners as prey. We discussed this. But he—" "No buts. Apologize." The cub's tail drooped. He looked at Gavin with an expression that managed to be both sheepish and deeply confused. "I am sorry for biting you in play." "Apology accepted," Gavin said cheerfully. He stood back up, his knees making a small popping sound that made Whisk Tooth flinch. "Though next time, maybe ask first. Consent is important." "I do not understand," Whisk Tooth said slowly. "Why did you not move? You saw me coming. Your eyes tracked my movement. But you did not dodge." Gavin shrugged. "Didn't need to. You're a kid testing boundaries. I get it. Where I come from, puppies do the same thing. They bite. They learn what's too hard. They adjust. It's normal." "Puppies?" Drusilla's translator hiccuped on the word, clearly lacking cultural context. "Small canines. We domesticated them a few thousand years back. They're friends now." "You domesticated predators?" The ambassador's voice had gone very quiet. "I mean, yeah. Also, cats, which are basically tiny murder machines, and horses, which can kick hard enough to cave in a skull, and birds of prey for hunting. And—" Gavin paused, noticing the expression on Drusilla's face. "Is this one of those things that sounds more impressive than it actually is? You have Predators in your homes? Well, they're not really predators anymore. They're pets, companions, family members, kind of. Whisk Tooth's eyes had gone very round. You made predators into family? Sure did. Why, is that weird? The cub and his mother exchanged a long look, the kind of look that communicated entire paragraphs without a single word. Finally, Dracula spoke, her voice carefully controlled. On our world, predators do not make family with other species. Predators make prey. Or they make rivals. There is no third option. Sounds lonely, Gavin observed. Sounds practical, Dracula countered. Sounds boring. The ambassador's tail twitched, which Gavin had learned was the Draknari equivalent of a suppressed laugh. You are either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Gavin. I've been called both, usually in the same sentence. He looked down at his arm again, where the bite marks were now barely visible. Look, no hard feelings, okay? Whisk Tooth was just being curious. Kids do that. It's fine. It is not fine, Dracula repeated, but there was less heat in it now. His behavior was inappropriate and dangerous. He will be disciplined. Oh, come on. He bit you. Barely felt it. That is not the point. Gavin sighed. Okay, look, how about this? Instead of punishment, why don't we call this a learning experience? The kid learned that not all species are built the same. That's valuable information, right? Better he learns it now with me than later with someone who might actually get hurt. Whisk Tooth, who had been watching this exchange like a spectator at a tennis match, suddenly piped up. I want to understand. Why are you so durable? You do not have scales. You do not have exoskeleton like the Hemish. Your skin looks thin. But it is not thin. Why? That, Gavin said, grinning in a way that showed his own teeth, flat, mostly, with just a hint of canine, barely worth mentioning by Draknari standards, is a really good question. And if you want, I can explain it. But it's going to blow your mind a little. The cub's ears perked forward, a sign of intense interest. I want to know. Please. Dracula looked like she wanted to object, but curiosity was clearly winning out over diplomatic protocol. Perhaps a brief explanation would be acceptable. For educational purposes. Educational purposes, Gavin echoed, still grinning. Right. Okay, kid. Buckle up. Let me tell you about a little thing called human evolution, and why everything on our planet spent millions of years trying to kill us, and mostly failing. Whisk Tooth sat down, his tail curling around his paws in the Draknari posture of an attentive student, and Gavin, whose arm bore the fading impression of 40 juvenile teeth, prepared to explain why humanity had not just survived the universe's expectations, but had cheerfully exceeded them in the most inconvenient way possible. This, he reflected, was going to be fun. The thing about having your entire understanding of the universe casually dismantled by a soft-skinned biped is that it tends to create obsession. Whisk Tooth was obsessed. It had been 3 days since the bite, which is how Gavin had started mentally cataloging it, complete with capital letters, and the young Draknari had become his shadow. Not in a creepy way, more in a scientist observing a fascinating specimen way, if that scientist had claws and kept making little chirping sounds of confusion. He is watching you again, Dracula observed, not looking up from her datapad. Gavin glanced over his shoulder. Sure enough, Whisk Tooth was approximately 15 feet away, crouched behind a support column in the station's main corridor, 3 eyes locked onto Gavin with an intensity usually reserved for hunting prey. The cub's tail was doing this little twitching thing it did when he was thinking hard. Yeah, I noticed. Gavin said. Does it bother you? Not really. It's kind of cute, actually. Drusilla made a sound that her translator rendered as a sigh, but which probably meant something closer to, "Why is this my life now?" in Draknari. He has been asking questions, so many questions, about human biology, human culture, human durability. Last night he asked me if humans could survive in vacuum. We can't, Gavin supplied helpfully. I know. I told him this. He seemed disappointed. They continued walking, heading toward the diplomatic wing where Gavin had a meeting scheduled with the Hemish trade delegation. Behind them, Whisk Tooth followed at what he clearly believed was a stealthy distance. It wasn't. The cub's idea of stealth involved walking directly down the center of the corridor while staring intently at the back of Gavin's head. You know, Gavin said conversationally, where I come from, we have these nature documentaries. Cameras follow animals around, record their behavior, and then some guy with a really nice voice narrates it. Very educational. I am familiar with the concept. We have similar programs. Right? Well, I'm starting to feel like I'm in one, except the camera has claws and keeps testing whether I'm edible. As if on cue, Whisk Tooth suddenly darted forward, closing the distance in 3 bounding leaps. Before Gavin could react, not that he was particularly worried, the cub reached out with one paw and pressed it against Gavin's arm. Gently this time, more exploratory than aggressive. The cub's claws were retracted, which was probably a good sign. Whisk Tooth, Drusilla said, in that tone that mothers across the galaxy seem to perfect. The one that means, you are testing my patience. I am conducting an experiment, Whisk Tooth announced, with the dignity of someone who absolutely believes they're doing important scientific work. An experiment, Gavin repeated. Yes, I am testing pressure thresholds. The cub pressed a little harder, watching Gavin's face for any sign of discomfort. Draknari hide yields at approximately 40 pounds of force per square inch. Hemish exoskeleton yields at 28 pounds. I am attempting to establish human baseline tolerance. How very methodical of you. Science requires precision, Whisk Tooth said seriously. He pressed harder. Gavin's skin compressed slightly, but showed no signs of breaking. The cub's ears flattened in that way that suggested frustration. You are reading at 62 pounds per square inch with no tissue damage. This is inefficient design. Inefficient? More mass required to achieve same protective result as scales or exoskeleton. Wasteful? Gavin couldn't help it. He laughed. Kid, I hate to break it to you, but evolution doesn't really care about efficiency. It cares about, does it work? And, did you live long enough to make babies? Everything else is just bonus features. Whisk Tooth released his paw, sitting back on his haunches. But why does it work? You explained humans are endurance hunters, that you run prey to exhaustion. But thick skin does not help running. Thick skin is heavy. It should slow you down. Well, there's your first mistake. It's not just thick skin. It's the whole package. Gavin held up his arm, rotating it so the cub could see. Muscle density, bone structure, connective tissue. We're built to take damage and keep going. Because back on Earth, if you couldn't keep going, you died. Simple as that. But you do not look durable, Whisk Tooth protested, and there was genuine distress in his voice now, like Gavin's continued existence was a personal affront to everything he'd been taught about the universe. That's kind of the point. Before the cub could ask another question, they arrived at the meeting room. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a space that had been adapted for multi-species comfort. varying levels of gravity plating, adjustable atmosphere controls, furniture that could accommodate everything from the massive Drachnary to the delicate Hemish. Speaking of which, Whistledown was already there, arranging data tablets on the conference table with the kind of fussy precision that came naturally to insectoid species. The Hemish medical officer looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, scaled it up to human size, and given it an anxiety disorder. Compound eyes glittered as they turned toward the new arrivals. "Ah, Gavin," Whistledown clicked, their translator rendering it in a pleasant, gender-neutral tone. "And Ambassador Dracula. And the young scholar, I see." "Whisk Tooth is not supposed to be in diplomatic meetings," Dracula began. "Oh, let him stay," Gavin said. "He's on a learning kick. Might as well learn something useful." "I want to learn how humans break," Whisk Tooth announced cheerfully. The room went very quiet. Whistledown's antennae twitched in a way that suggested alarm. "That is a concerning statement." "He doesn't mean it like it sounds," Gavin assured them. "He's just curious about comparative biology." "Right, kid?" "Yes, comparative breaking points. Very scientific." "We need to work on your phrasing," Dracula muttered. The meeting itself was standard diplomatic fare. Trade routes, cultural exchange programs, the usual. But Gavin noticed Whisk Tooth watching him the entire time, those three eyes tracking every movement. When Gavin leaned back in his chair, the cub made a small note on a datapad. When Gavin picked up a stylus, more notes, it was like being studied by a very intense, very fuzzy academic. About halfway through the meeting, Gavin reached for his water bottle. Standard issue station container, nothing fancy. As he twisted the cap, which had been tightened a bit too enthusiastically, his knuckles went white with effort. Whisk Tooth made a strangled sound. "Are you all right?" Whistledown asked the cub. "He is." His skeletal leverage. The force application. Whisk Tooth seemed to be struggling with his translator. "How many pounds of pressure can human hands generate?" Gavin paused mid-sip. Depends on the person. Average grip strength is maybe 80 to 100 pounds. Some people train to go higher." 100 pounds? The cub's voice cracked. "With just hands? Is that weird?" Whistledown tilted their head, compound eyes refracting the light. "Gavin, perhaps you are not aware, but Drachnari juvenile grip strength averages 30 pounds. Adult Drachnari reach approximately 65. You are describing forces that exceed adult apex predator capabilities." "Huh?" Gavin said intelligently. "Huh?" Dracula echoed, but with significantly more concern. "And that's just average humans?" Whisk Tooth pressed. "Not warriors? Not hunters?" "That's just average, yeah. Athletes can go way higher. Rock climbers, gymnasts, martial artists, they train grip strength specifically. I knew a guy who could hang from a doorframe with 4 fingers for like 5 minutes straight." "That is horrifying," Whistledown observed clinically. "That is impossible," Whisk Tooth countered. "Kid, I hate to keep destroying your worldview here, but humans are really, really good at squeezing things. It's kind of our whole deal. We evolved to grip branches, grip tools, grip weapons. And then we kept doing it for millions of years until we got scary good at it." The cub was vibrating now, his tail lashing back and forth. "I want to test this. I want to compare. Please." Dracula opened her mouth, probably to say something diplomatic and motherly and reasonable, but Gavin spoke first. "Sure, why not? Give me your paw." "Gavin," the ambassador began. "It's fine. Really." Whisk Tooth eagerly extended his front paw, the one with the retractable claws. Gavin took it carefully, noting the pads, the surprising warmth. The way the cub's fingers, 3 main digits and 1 opposing thumb, interesting, were trembling slightly with excitement. "Okay," Gavin said. "Squeeze my hand as hard as you can. Don't worry about hurting me." The cub squeezed. Gavin felt the pressure, definitely noticeable but nowhere near painful. After a moment, Whisk Tooth released, looking dejected. "Now, my turn," Gavin said. He applied pressure slowly, watching the cub's face. At about 40 pounds, Whisk Tooth's eyes widened. At 60, the cub made a small sound of discomfort. Gavin immediately released. "You okay?" "You were not even trying," Whisk Tooth whispered. "Well, no. Didn't want to hurt you." "But you could hurt me. Easily. With just hands." "I mean, yeah, probably. But I won't. Because we're friends, right?" The cub stared at him. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of predator-prey dynamics had just been thrown out an airlock. "Friends," he repeated slowly, testing the word. "Sure. You seem like a good kid. Curious, smart, enthusiastic about learning. Those are friend qualities where I come from." "But I am Predator. You are?" Whisk Tooth trailed off, clearly struggling with categorization. "Human," Gavin finished. "Just human. And humans make friends with everybody. It's kind of our thing. We're friendly." Whistledown made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "Gavin, I believe you are giving the young one a philosophical crisis." "Is that what that look is? I thought he was just thinking hard." Drashala was watching this exchange, with an expression that was difficult to read, but if Gavin had to guess, it was somewhere between amused and concerned, with a side order of, "What have I gotten myself into?" The meeting eventually concluded, trade agreements tentatively drafted, cultural exchange protocols established. As everyone was packing up, Whisk Tooth approached Gavin again, more hesitant this time. "Gavin?" "Yeah, buddy? On your world, when you domesticated predators, how did you do it?" "Well, it took a really long time. Thousands of years. We basically made friends with the ones who were willing to be friends, and eventually they evolved to live with us. But they were dangerous." "Sure. Still are, kind of. A dog can bite you. A cat can scratch you. A horse can kick you. But they usually don't, because they like us. We feed them, take care of them, play with them. They're part of our families." Whisk Tooth was quiet for a long moment. Then, very carefully, he asked, "Could Draknari be domesticated?" "Whisk Tooth!" Drashala barked, her voice sharp enough to make everyone in the room flinch. "I am just asking a hypothetical question," the cub protested. "That is not an appropriate—" "Actually," Gavin interrupted gently, "I think he's asking something different. Right, kid?" Whisk Tooth nodded eagerly. "I am asking if Draknari and humans could be friends. Real friends. Not just diplomatic agreements. Friends like you have with your domesticated predators." The room went quiet again, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. The thoughtful kind. Gavin crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the cub. "Whisk Tooth, you already bit me. You tested me. You watched me. You squeezed my hand. And I didn't get mad, didn't hurt you back, didn't treat you like a threat. From where I'm standing, we're already friends. Unless you don't want to be?" "I want to be friends," Whisk Tooth said immediately. Then, more quietly, "I want to understand you, your species, why you are the way you are. Kid, I've got stories that'll keep you up at night. Good stories. Crazy stories. Stories about how humans took over a planet that was actively trying to kill us. You want to hear them?" The cub's eyes went wide. All 3 of them. "Yes. Yes, please." Drashala sighed, but there was something almost fond in it now. Very well, but Whisk Tooth, you will ask politely. You will not bite Gavin again without permission. Permission? Whistledown interjected. Why would there be permission for biting? It's a cultural thing, Gavin said quickly. Don't worry about it. I am worrying about it. Don't. As they left the meeting room, Whisk Tooth fell into step beside Gavin, no longer trailing behind like a stalker, but walking alongside like a friend. The cub was practically vibrating with excitement, questions clearly queuing up faster than his translator could handle them. Gavin? Yeah? Do all humans have high grip strength? Most of us, yeah. Do all humans have thick skin? Compared to some species, sure. Do all humans survive being bitten by juvenile Draknari? Well, I did, so probably. This is going to change everything, Whisk Tooth said, more to himself than anyone else. He had no idea how right he was. Behind them, Drashala and Whistledown exchanged glances. The ambassador spoke first, her voice low. This feels significant. It is, Whistledown agreed. The cub has learned that soft does not mean weak, that friendly does not mean harmless. This is the kind of lesson that reshapes civilizations. Or just one very curious child, Drashala said hopefully. Whistledown's antennae twitched. With respect, Ambassador, curious children are precisely how civilizations get reshaped. Ahead of them, Gavin was explaining the concept of wrestling to Whisk Tooth, who was listening with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for survival training. The human's voice carried back to them, cheerful and unbothered. So basically, you try to pin the other person without actually hurting them. It's all about technique and leverage. Want me to show you sometime? Yes. When? Now. Can we do it now? Maybe after I finish my shift, buddy. I've got 3 more meetings today. Can I watch the meetings? If your mom says it's okay. 3 eyes turned to Drashala with an expression of such hopeful pleading that the ambassador felt something in her chest twist. It was the universal parent experience of knowing you're about to say yes to something you probably shouldn't. Fine, she said, but you stay quiet and take notes. I will take the best notes, Whisk Tooth promised, already pulling out his data pad. As they walked through the station corridors, past crew members of a dozen different species, past viewports showing the endless stars beyond, something was shifting. It was small, barely noticeable, the kind of change that historians would only recognize in hindsight. But it was there. A young predator was learning that the universe was bigger and stranger than he'd been taught. And the human teaching him was doing it with patience, humor, and skin that apparently doubled as light armor. The galaxy, Drashala reflected, was about to get very interesting, or possibly very complicated. With humans, it was hard to tell the difference. The request came on day 8, formal, ceremonial, delivered with the kind of gravity usually reserved for declaring war or proposing marriage. Whisk Tooth stood in the center of the observation deck, Drashala beside him, and spoke in the most serious tone Gavin had ever heard from the cub. Gavin of humanity, I request a strength proving. A what now? It is tradition, Drashala explained, and she looked tired in a way that suggested she'd already had this argument with her son multiple times. Among Draknari, when respect must be established between individuals, we engage in controlled combat. Not to harm, but to understand, to know where we stand. So, wrestling, Gavin said. Simplified, yes, but with cultural significance. And you want to do this? Gavin asked the cub directly. Whisk Tooth nodded, All three eyes locked on Gavin's face. I need to know, not just that you are durable, but how durable. What you can do. What I cannot do. I need to understand my place. There was something in the cub's voice, a vulnerability that caught Gavin off guard. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was an identity crisis with claws. Okay, Gavin said. Let's do it. Gavin, you do not have to, Drashala began. I know, but he needs this. And honestly, I'm kind of curious too. Which is how, 2 hours later, Gavin found himself standing in the station's gymnasium, hastily converted into something resembling an arena, with approximately 40 aliens watching from the safety of the observation gallery. Word had spread fast. The Hemish delegation was there, along with a handful of Nulvath aquatic types in their environmental suits, and several other species Gavin didn't recognize. Whisk Tooth stood across from him, claws extended now, posture low and predatory. The cub looked bigger somehow, more dangerous. This wasn't the curious student anymore. This was a Draknari in combat mode. Rules are simple, Drashala announced, her voice carrying through the space. Pin or submission only. No permanent damage. First to yield loses. Got it, Gavin said, rolling his shoulders. Begin. Whisk Tooth moved like lightning. 1 second he was 10 feet away. The next he was on Gavin, claws seeking purchase, teeth going for the shoulder. Fast, aggressive, committed. Gavin didn't try to dodge. He'd learned that surprised people more than anything else. He caught the cub mid-lunge, absorbed the impact, and redirected the momentum. Years of judo training kicked in, not to hurt, just to control. They hit the mat together. Whisk Tooth twisted, trying to get his jaws around Gavin's neck. Gavin tucked his chin, protected the vulnerable spots, and used his weight advantage. Not crushing, just immobilizing. The cub was strong, no question. Those claws left marks on Gavin's arms, thin lines that welled up with blood. Not deep, nothing serious, but proof that the cub could hurt if he wanted to. But Whisk Tooth was also young, inexperienced, fighting on instinct rather than strategy. Gavin had strategy, and endurance, and the stubborn human refusal to stay down. They rolled, separated, came together again. Whisk Tooth went for another bite, the full-power kind, catching Gavin's shoulder. The cub's teeth sank in maybe a quarter inch before hitting the dense muscle underneath. Not far enough. Not nearly far enough. You have to be kidding me, Whisk Tooth hissed around his mouthful of human. Nope, Gavin grunted, and used the moment of distraction to hook his leg behind the cubs and sweep. They went down hard. This time, Gavin didn't let Whisk Tooth roll away. He caught the cub's arms, pinned them, used his body weight to keep the young, Draknari flat against the mat. Not painfully, but completely. Whisk Tooth struggled, then struggled harder, then, with growing panic, struggled with everything he had. Nothing worked. The human didn't budge. You want to know the secret? Gavin said quietly, just loud enough for the cub to hear. It's not that we're stronger. We're not really. It's that we don't stop. Ever. You can bite me, scratch me, throw me around, and I'll just keep coming back. That's what humans do. We outlast everything. Whisk Tooth's struggles weakened, not from exhaustion, but from understanding. Do you yield? Gavin asked. A long pause. Then, quietly, I yield. Gavin immediately released him, rolling away and offering a hand up. The cub took it, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. They stood there, both breathing hard, while the observation gallery remained dead silent. Then Whisk Tooth did something that made Drashala gasp. He pressed his forehead against Gavin's chest, the Draknari gesture of ultimate respect, usually reserved for pack leaders and honored elders. I understand now, the cub said softly. You are not prey. You are not predator. You are something else, something we do not have words for. Just human, Gavin replied, ruffling the fur between the cub's ears. Just stubbornly, annoyingly, impossibly human. In the gallery, Whistledown turned to the nearest Nulvath. Did we just witness the beginning of something significant? I believe we did, the aquatic being burbled through their translator. Below, Whisk Tooth was already asking another question, because of course he was. Gavin, do all human children train in combat like this? Some do. We call it sports. You teach younglings to fight for fun? Kid, wait until I tell you about hockey. The cub's 3 eyes went wide. What is hockey? Gavin grinned. Oh, buddy, sit down. This is going to take a while. 3 months after Bosk had followed Sophia home like the world's most dangerous stray, the distress signal came through. Sophia was cataloging fungal samples when the emergency beacon lit up her comm panel like a distress flare. Automated. Broad spectrum. The kind of signal that meant someone was having a spectacularly bad day. She pulled up the coordinates. Northern Hemisphere, about 18 kilometers through some of the nastiest terrain Nhara 6 had to offer. Well, she said to Bosk, who was sprawling across her bunk in a patch of artificial sunlight, there goes our afternoon. Bosk's ears perked up. His stripes shifted to curious orange. Sophia started packing. Medical supplies, the good stuff, not the basic field kit. Water purification tablets, emergency rations, flares. Her hatchet, because you never knew. The portable scanner that could detect life signs through interference. We're going for a hike, she told Bosk, who immediately jumped down and began his pre-adventure routine of spinning in excited circles. A long one. Try to pace yourself. They set out an OCTV hour before noon, when Nhara 6's sun hit its peak, and the predators mostly napped in the shade. Mostly. The ones with any sense, anyway. The terrain got rougher as they traveled north. The forest here grew denser, angrier somehow. Trees with thorns the size of daggers, vines that writhed when you got too close, flowers that smelled like rotting meat because they ate rotting meat. Bosk had grown considerably in 3 months. He reached Sophia's hip now, all lean muscle and developing coordination. His stripes had settled into a base pattern of deep blue with gold highlights, though they still shifted with his moods. Right now, they pulsed with alert awareness, his senses processing 1,000 signals Sophia couldn't detect. He'd also become protective, aggressively so. When a tree serpent dropped from a branch overhead, Bosk intercepted it mid-fall, slamming it to the ground with a snarl that made Sophia's teeth vibrate. The serpent, wisely, decided it had urgent business elsewhere, and slithered away at top speed. Thanks, Sophia said, though I had that handled. Bosk gave her a look that clearly said, sure you did, and continued walking point. They reached the crash site in the late afternoon, and oh, it was bad. The survey ship had come down hard, carving a trench through the forest before slamming into a rocky outcrop. Metal twisted at angles metal shouldn't twist. Smoke still rose from the engine compartment, and surrounding the wreckage, keeping 6 very terrified aliens pinned inside what remained of the cargo bay, was a pack of adult Dantari. Sophia counted 15, maybe more in the tree line. The aliens were firing sporadically, panicked energy bursts that lit up the clearing in chaotic flashes. Most shots went wide. The ones that didn't just made the Dantari angrier. Well, Sophia muttered, this is going to be fun. She studied the situation with the tactical assessment of someone who'd stopped caring about her own mortality somewhere around month 4. The Dantari weren't attacking yet. They were testing, probing, waiting for the aliens' weapons to run out of charge. Classic pack behavior. Patient, methodical, terrifying. The alpha female was obvious. Larger than the others, stripes showing complex patterns that marked her as the decision-maker. She sat at the edge of the clearing, watching with those golden eyes that missed nothing. Sophia looked down at Bossk. Stay. Bossk's stripes went confused purple. Stay? With danger happening? Stay, Sophia repeated, using the tone she'd developed that meant, I'm serious, and you will listen to me. Bossk sat, but his whole body vibrated with the urge to not stay. Sophia took a breath, checked her knife, not to use, just to know it was there, and walked directly into the clearing. The gunfire stopped first. The aliens noticed her, their universal translators probably screaming warnings about the human walking casually toward certain death. Then the Dantari noticed her. 15. Apex predators turned as one, attention shifting from the wreckage to this new, small, soft thing that had just volunteered itself as a target. The alpha female stood. Sophia kept walking, steady pace, no hesitation. Hesitation got you killed. Confidence, even fake confidence, bought you seconds. Sometimes seconds were enough. She stopped 10 feet from the alpha and did something that would have horrified every xenobiologist in the Alliance. She sat down. Not a combat stance. Not a challenge. Just sat, cross-legged, in the dirt, and looked up at the alpha female with what she hoped read as calm respect. The alpha tilted her head. Her stripes flickered through patterns, orange confusion, red irritation, purple uncertainty. Sophia waited, breathing steady. Hands visible, empty, non-threatening. Behind her, from the wreckage, she heard frantic whispers in multiple languages. The universal translator caught fragments. What is she doing? Is she insane? Someone stop her! Nobody stopped her. The alpha took a step forward, then another. She was massive up close, easily 3 times Bossk's size, stripes showing the kind of complex patterns that came from age and experience. She lowered her head, sniffing, examining this strange creature that smelled like smoke and chemicals, and the alpha's stripes shifted to surprised green. Bossk's scent. All over the human. Sophia made a sound, not a growl this time. Something softer. The noise she'd heard Bossk make when he was content, a sort of rumbling chirp that came from deep in his chest. She'd practiced it, felt stupid doing it, but now it mattered. The alpha's ears swiveled forward. Sophia repeated the sound, then added a low whistle she'd heard adult Dantari use when calling to cubs. She kept her posture submissive, head slightly lowered, shoulders relaxed, no direct challenge. She was gambling everything on 3 months of observation, 3 months of watching Bossk, learning his body language, understanding the vocalizations he made and when. 3 months of accidentally becoming fluent in Dantari communication through sheer proximity. The alpha circled her. Once, twice, considering. Then she sat. The rest of the pack took this as a cue to relax slightly, though they kept watching the wreckage with hungry interest. Sophia gestured toward the crashed ship, then made a pushing motion. Go away. Leave them. The alpha snorted. Her stripes flashed red. Why should we? Because, Sophia gestured back, or tried to, using a combination of hand signals and posture shifts. They're with me. The alpha stared at her for a long moment. Then, in a move that stopped Sophia's heart, she leaned forward and pressed her muzzle against Sophia's shoulder, sniffing deeply, scenting. Sophia held perfectly still. This was a test. Move wrong. and those jaws could snap her neck before she registered pain. The alpha pulled back, made a decision Sophia couldn't read, and vocalized something that sounded like a command. The pack withdrew. Not all at once, slowly, grudgingly, with many backward glances, but they withdrew, melting into the forest until only the alpha remained. She looked at Sophia one more time, made that same rumbling chirp Sophia had used, and then she too disappeared into the trees. Sophia sat there for another 30 seconds, making sure they were really gone, before her hands started shaking. "Okay," she said to nobody. That happened. Behind her, the aliens were emerging from the wreckage like confused mollusks leaving their shells. 6 of them, various species, all staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to something approaching religious awe. The one in front, a gelatinous being whose species Sophia couldn't immediately place, approached on wobbly appendages. "You," he stammered in heavily accented standard, "you spoke to them." "Sort of," Sophia said, standing up and brushing dirt off her pants. Her legs felt like jelly, probably the adrenaline wearing off. "Mostly I asked them nicely to leave." "Nicely?" "Politely." "That's—" The gelatinous alien paused, processing. "That's impossible. Dantari don't negotiate. They don't communicate with other species. They hunt, or they don't hunt." "Well," Sophia said, pulling out her medical kit, "today they negotiated. Anyone bleeding?" Busk chose that moment to come bounding out of the forest, having decided that stay had expired as a command. He went straight to Sophia, circling her, checking for injuries with urgent little whines. "I'm fine," she told him. Dramatic, but fine. The aliens watched this interaction with the kind of stunned silence usually reserved for witnessing miracles or catastrophes. Possibly both. The gelatinous being found his voice first. "That's a Dantari. His name is Bosk. He's with me." "Yeah." Another alien, this one with too many arms and crystalline skin, spoke up. "How is this possible? We've studied them for years. They're classified as non-communicative predators. Extreme threat level." Sophia looked at Busk, who was now showing off for the strangers, stripes bright gold, doing his stupid prance that made him look more like an overgrown puppy than a killing machine. "Maybe," she said slowly, "you've been studying them wrong." The gelatinous alien, who later introduced himself as Jundu, recorded everything on his functioning helmet camera. The footage would be on every galactic news feed within hours. Sophia walking into a pack of apex predators. Sitting down, communicating. The pack withdrawing. And most damning of all, Bosk following her like a devoted companion. They made camp in the clearing while waiting for rescue. The aliens kept their distance from Bosk, who found this hilarious and made a game of seeing how close he could get before they flinched. "He's playing with you," Sophia explained. "He thinks you're funny." "We nearly died today," one of them said weakly. "Yeah, but you didn't. So now it's funny." Jundu watched Sophia share her rations with Bosk, the cub taking food gently from her hand, with a delicacy that contradicted every report about Dantari feeding behavior. "How?" he asked finally. "How did you do this?" Sophia thought about it, watching Bosk try to catch bioluminescent insects in the gathering dusk. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "He was hungry. I fed him. He stayed. We learned each other's language. But the danger was never really there. Not after the first growl." She smiled slightly. "Turns out, if you treat something with respect instead of fear, it notices. Even apex predators. Especially apex predators, maybe." The rescue ship arrived 6 hours later. lights sweeping across the clearing. As the crew disembarked with weapons raised, Sophia had to physically step in front of Bosk. "He's with me," she said firmly. The rescue captain looked at his orders, looked at the Dantari, looked at Sophia standing protectively in front of a creature that outweighed her by 80 pounds. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I'm going to need you to explain a lot of things." "Sure," Sophia said, "but we're taking him with us." "That's not negotiable." Bosk, reading the tension, moved closer to Sophia, stripes flickering to protective red. The captain looked at his crew. His crew looked at the footage Jundu had already uploaded. The footage that was, at that very moment, spreading across the galactic net like wildfire. "Fine," the captain said, "but he rides in the cargo bay." "He rides with me," they compromised. Bosk got his own seat, specially reinforced. He spent the entire flight with his head on Sophia's lap, stripes content blue, occasionally snoring. And the galaxy watched the footage on repeat, trying to understand what they'd just witnessed. A human walking into certain death and walking back out. A human speaking to the unspeakable. A human turning the most dangerous predator on Nhara 6 into a companion. By morning, the questions would start. By afternoon, the theories. By evening, the reevaluation of everything they thought they knew about humans. But for now, Sophia just scratched behind Bosk's ears and looked out the viewport at the stars, wondering what exactly she'd started.